What do you call Mark Calloway in lingerie? A hot take. Let's not dilly-daddle. I asked for your sizzling hot takes. And boy, howdy, we had some Chili's waiters come out with some fajitas because Daddy choke me. This should be fun. And I am going to respond to these bad boys. So you better stick right there and take a listen, or a watch, or a taste, or a feel to the Apron Bump podcast.
And the hardest, talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock this. Let's get started.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Apron Bump podcast. I am your host, the hardest part of the ring, Kyle. How's everybody doing today? Hope everybody's having a lovely, lovely bump day all around the world, all across this flat earth of ours. Hope everybody's doing well. Doing something a little different this week, diving in to the community. I reached my hand out there to the community, and boy howdy, you guys responded. I sent out a tweet or a post. Are they still called tweets? I think they're just called posts now. About a week or so ago, asking, give me your wrestling hot takes. I will respond in a future podcast episode. And boys and girls and everything in between, that future is now. The time is now. You can't see me. My time is now. So got a lot of responses here, depending on how long we chew on these. This could end up being a two-parter, but we'll see. We'll see. But we got a lot of responses from a couple different sources, so should be a good time. So we'll dive right into it. But first, before that, make sure you follow the Apron Bump on all the social medias, whether it be X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, whatever, at Apron Bump, all across the board. You'll find the links to all of these in the description. Apronbump.com for everything else. You'll find all my full episodes wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, why don't you give this bad boy a like, leave a comment, leave a tickle on the cheek, a slap on the belly button, and spit into my belly button until I inflate like a hot air balloon. So, I got lost there. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, leave all, rate, review, all that shit. If you want to be a part of this, maybe I'll do this again. It seems like I got a lot of responses, so I'll likely do this again. So if you want to be abreast of whenever I do an episode like this and you want your response to be included, make sure you're following me on all the social medias, because like I said, I'll probably be doing these more often. This is the slot, in the Apron Bump cycle. As many of you know, the Apron Bump, I mainly cover old school wrestling from various different promotions and eras, companies big and small across 4 different decades. And I have like a cycle that I go through, whether it's, Ring of Honor, TNA, Monday Night Wars, Wrestling Wars of the 90s, Ruthless Aggression, etc., etc. This is the point in the cycle where I usually cover Progress Wrestling. However, I recently just did a watch along of Progress Wrestling Chapter 40. You can find that on-demand video on YouTube, on my YouTube page, if you want to go check it out. It was a fun old time. I have a promo code if you want to sign up for Demand Progress. Gets you half off. I'll probably put that in the description as well. If not, it's on the YouTube video. So go check that out if you haven't already. If I get a good enough response, I'll maybe be doing more of those. If not, well, fuck you, I guess. So go check that out. Just wanted to plug that real quick. All right, let's get into some hot takes, shall we? Let's quit teasing. Let's jam it right in there. Let's start out with the Discord. Discord always gets priority. One last plug. Join the Discord. We have a lot of fun in there, and you'll get priority in episodes like this. We do predictions. We do a lot of stuff. Current wrestling, old school wrestling, tons of discussion happens in there. But from the Discord, let's kick it off with old Brundon. Because this is actually 2 in 1 here, because we got Brundon's take, and then we got the take in response from Fretz of the Fretzlemania podcast. So Brundon says, Jey Uso is not a good wrestler. However, it doesn't matter because he is so over with the crowd. Fretz offers a response to this. It absolutely baffles me that people don't think Jey is good in the ring. Want a hot take? I think that take is a terrible take. No offense, in parentheses. So we got a bit of a clash here to start out. Like it. I like it. Started out hot and heavy. Let's get to it. So the basic notion here, the basic premise at hand here is that Jey Uso is not a good wrestler, but it doesn't matter because he's over with the crowd. People think that he is a good wrestler. Where do I stand on that? Well, here's the thing. Here's the first question we have to ask to answer this question, and that is, what is a good wrestler? I'll let you chew on that for a second. You probably had an instant response to that. You may think it's the in-ring. You may think the promos hold more weight. Maybe it's impressive moves. Maybe it's conveying a story from bell to bell. Maybe it's having the good look. Maybe it's looking like a threat. Maybe it's doing a lot of innovative maneuvers in the ring. Maybe it's having 5-star matches. Maybe it's having good cage match ratings. Maybe it's tickets, merch sales. There's so many different criteria that people consider when they talk about, who's the best wrestler? Is this guy a good wrestler? Who's better between these two wrestlers? It's a really exhausting and dumb, discussion to have when debating if somebody is a good wrestler or not. But ultimately, what it comes down to, no matter what promotion, no matter what era it is, a good wrestler is a wrestler that makes you care about them. Plain and simple. That's it. Nothing else. I mean, there is other elements to it, but that's above all else. That's paramount. Do people care about you as a wrestler? If they do, you are doing your job, and therefore you are a good wrestler. Whether you're Jey Uso in WWE, whether you're MJF in AEW, whether you're Nick Gage in GCW, is he still there? I don't know. Whether you're Montanza Cueto and Lucha Underground, doesn't matter. Different styles, different flavors, different shapes and sizes. If you can conjure emotion from the audience that you are performing in front of, you're a good wrestler. So now the question, does Jey Uso do that? Will turn on literally any show that he's on. His music hits, he comes through the crowd, and the entire arena is on their fucking feet. I've been there live. I've experienced it live. I watch it whenever I'm watching WWE. I saw the reaction when he won the Intercontinental Championship. I saw the match itself. I saw the lead up to that match. Jey Uso is a good wrestler. It's not about how many moves you do. Yeah, people are like, oh, he just super kicks. That's all he does. Yeah, Stone Cold just punched and kicked. Do you think fucking Shawn Michaels had a deep move set? No, he did 4 moves. So does Jey Uso. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Who cares? Brian Cage has a lot of moves. Do you care about him? Is he a good wrestler? You might be saying, yes, in my opinion, he's not, because who gives a fuck about Brian Cage? I don't know why Brian Cage is catching strays on this question, but I don't know, fuck him. So to answer this, or I guess my response to this, is that yes, Jey Uso is a good wrestler. I mean, Brundon says he's so over with the crowd. That statement in itself means he's a good wrestler. Plain and simple. Take your star ratings, take your bangers, take your forearm trading, your false finishes, all that boring shit, and just throw it to the side and don't let it cloud your judgment. Jey Uso is a good wrestler. He's a great wrestler. Plain and simple. Another one from Fretz from the Discord. By the way, check out the Fretzlemania podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. I've been on it a few times. He covers old school wrestling just like the hardest part of the ring, so go give it a check out, Ski. Fretz says, If done right, the 24/7 title could be a fun part of TV again, like go to weddings, football games, Kane's mayoral debates, airplane rides, etc., and make it a true 24/7 social media title that can change hands and does anywhere. Well, so if I'm reading this right, you're saying that like because that's what the 24/7 title was when it existed. Like celebrities were winning it, people were rolling each other up on like newscasts and like behind the scenes at like different meet and greets and various events outside of the arena and outside of TV. That's what the 24/7 was. So there's no real changes to how it was perceived on TV. It's just a waste of time, man. It's just who cares? Who cares? The hardcore title, which is the title that it always gets compared to, purely, I think, just for the fact that it's a 24/7 title. The hardcore title had it like translated into content for the television show, whereas the 24/7 title, like, I don't know, if you want to have fucking Gronk hold this championship up, like, what does that do? Who cares? You know, like he's not having matches on TV. So no one gains anything. And what is lost is potentially TV time on the weekly television shows. The hardcore title, as the title suggests, was a hardcore championship. So you had like your plunder, your weapons, your extreme quote unquote stuff. Remember, the hardcore title was around when ECW was around. So there was a hunger and an appetite for that style of wrestling. I don't think that style of wrestling can be truly taken advantage of in modern day WWE. I don't think people care about that. Like a lower tier 24/7 title, I just don't think has a place in wrestling, personally. It's a waste of time, in my opinion. So I'm very glad that Nikki Cross tried to throw it in the trash, I guess. Do you think it's still on the floor somewhere? Scott George from the Discord chimes in, says, Ilya Dragunov is better than what he's being booked and deserves to be on TV weekly. So I think this might have been sent before it was announced that he tore his ACL and is going to be out for 6 to 9 months. So with that being said, that aside, Dragunov's great. He's just such a unique character, so intense. Nobody wrestles like him on the roster. And the stuff that he's done in NXT UK and in NXT US speaks for itself. I think he's super exciting to watch. Like I said, just a unique presence. And I think he absolutely deserves a spot. Sometimes it's just a matter of like, where do you fit in? Right? Because let's pretend like he wasn't injured. It's like, where does he fit in? Do we feed him to Gunther right away? I don't think. People are clamoring for that. And of course, I would love to see that again. But it's like, why do we need to blow our load right away? Ilya versus Gunther. I know that's not necessarily what this take is talking about, but like, Ilya is being introduced to this audience. I know many people know him from NXT, but some don't. I mean, do you book him in the Intercontinental Championship picture? Because right now, that's, Braun Breaker was the champion, and now Jey Uso has it, and I'm sure that's going to bleed into the Bloodline story, and Braun Breaker, in his own right, is cultivating a dominant reign of his own, or he was until he lost the title. So that picture is pretty clouded right now with other stories going on. He was inserting himself into the Judgment Day story before he got injured. So my response to this take is I enjoy Dragunov. I would love to see him on TV weekly. It's just a matter of him having a spot. Sometimes there's just not a spot to slide into. Sometimes you're just the utility guy, and there's nothing wrong with that. They were keeping him around. He was on TV frequently, and I believe when he comes back, he will eventually come face to face with Gunther, or at least, insert himself into the IC title picture. He's going to be a focal point for years to come. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. One more from the Discord, and Fretz has another one. Says JBL is one of the worst gimmicks of all time. To go from APA to Ted DiBiase Light when he could have reverted back to Blackjack or Stan Hansen Light sucked huge. His title run was boring and a good reason to avoid SmackDown for a year. So I'm about to enter this era of WWE in my podcast, and I'm very curious in consuming the JBL title reign for the second time because I lived through it as it was happening. I remember not being super stoked about it as it was happening, but I'm looking forward to taking another look at it and see if maybe it was better than I remember, because sometimes things are. JBL, one of the worst gimmick changes of all time. I mean, I could name 20 that are worse. I mean, because at the point, he was Bradshaw, one half of the APA. So, which is the gimmick is what? A big brawling badass. So they take out Ron Simmons. I forget, then he gets like fired in kayfabe. So now we're just left with Bradshaw, big brawling badass. So if they were to do what you suggested, Fretz, and just revert him back to Blackjack, Stan Hansen Light when he was Justin Hawk Bradshaw, I don't think that would have been better. Like that wouldn't have been a gimmick change. That would have just been a aesthetic change. In fact, they kind of did do that when they first broke up the APA. In the initial draft, when Farouk went to SmackDown and Bradshaw stayed on Raw, they gave Bradshaw like the short tights and the cowboy boots. He came out with the bull rope and a cowboy hat. They basically did that, and it sucked. It was not good. I don't even know if I would say it sucked. It just nobody cared about it. And I mean, who can forget that? What was it? It was Bradshaw and Trish versus Chris Nowinski and Jackie, which is heralded as like one of the worst matches ever. Not to say that was Bradshaw's fault, but like I said, they tried that, was not successful. JBL, I think, is not as bad as people make it out to be. And like I said, I'm about to enter this era. I'm about to live through it through real time again. So, I mean, just follow along with the apron bump and we'll see if that opinion changes. But JBL, he was a good heel. He's a great talker. It was a unique character for the time. You know, Wall Street. It was a very dramatic change to his character, which I think, like, if you're going to, like, commit to Bradshaw, especially in the spot that he was in, the WWE champion, it has to be a dramatic change. If you made him, if you went from APA to Blackjack, that's not really a change. That's just, like I said, it's just changing your gear and how you're presented aesthetically. And I don't think anybody would care more about Bradshaw than they did when he was in the APA. Like, I think he'd still be a middling kind of, oh, nice to see you, I guess, but who cares kind of guy. Whereas JBL garnered heat from the audience. Now, at times, is that go away heat? Is that real heat? I think it was a little bit of both. But like I said, I don't think JBL is close to one of the worst gimmick changes of all time. I mean, let's think about a few worst gimmick changes of all time. Let's see here. I don't know. How about Beaver Cleavage? How about Stardust? How about all of Baron Corbin's iterations, like King Corbin and Constable Corbin? How about Avatar, Shinobi, Shorty G, Golga, Naked Midian? Like, yeah, JBL was on a bigger stage than most of those guys, but I don't know. I thought it was a net positive in terms of Bradshaw's career, I guess. Got another one from @KYD Justice on X. Says, critiquing everything every wrestling company doesn't make you smarter than everyone else. It just makes you come across as unlikable and a shill. Fans in general are the worst part of pro wrestling. 100% agree. I think, unfortunately, we've just entered this period, I mean, in society, where everybody has an opinion. Like, we're so connected to these celebrities and to these forms of entertainment. And unfortunately, everybody has a voice now. And I've said this before. It seems like wrestling fans today, their priority, and this is not everybody, but a lot of people online, their priority is looking smart and not enjoying wrestling. Like if you're a wrestling fan, shouldn't your number one priority be to put yourself in a position to be entertained by the entertainment medium that you're consuming? Whereas it feels like a lot of people will shove that fun aside in order to be perceived as being smart by strangers. And it's a very strange like dynamic that has been established on the internet, all the social medias, what have you. So yeah, it's obnoxious. I completely agree with this. The tribe, I don't even like get into like the tribalist dynamic on social media because like honestly, I just don't consider those people real people. Like people who are just like, you know, the tarps, like people like to take pictures of the crowds and they're tarping off areas, or they're, you know, screenshotting ratings when they're not that good, or they're, you know, botch accounts that just like will pick one company and just clip any botches that happen on any of their TV shows. Like that segment of the audience, I don't consider to be real people. Like they're like, like they don't offer anything to this earth. So like, you know what I mean? So why am I even going to respond to them? So I agree. They come off as unlikable and a shill. By the way, also speaking of the word shill and grifter, a lot of people love to use the word grifter nowadays. Let's take a look at the definition of grifter, because I think a lot of people have never seen the definition of grifter. A person, according to, I guess, what is this? Oxford Languages. A person who engages in petty or small scale swindling. And by the way, swindling, for anyone unfamiliar, means to use deception to deprive someone of money or possessions or to obtain money. So grifter means a person who engages in petty or small scale deception to obtain money. That's what grifter means. Grifter does not mean somebody that has the opposite opinion of you. If somebody online is talking positives about AEW, that does not mean that they're being paid by AEW. The opposite also applies. If somebody is repeatedly bashing AEW, that does not mean that they're being paid by another company or another entity. Maybe perhaps they just don't like AEW. Eric Bischoff comes to mind. Oh, Jesus Christ. Everybody online. God, Eric, how much you getting paid by WWE to shit on AEW? Oh, Eric Bischoff's just bashing AEW because he's getting paid by, I don't know, some mythological entity up in the sky that's just giving him money for saying bad things about AEW. You ever just stop and think maybe he just doesn't like the product they put out? Like, and yeah, people respond to it, so he's going to keep doing it. You are the reason, asshole. What the fuck? My point is that if somebody has an opinion on thing and it's a persistent opinion, just because you don't agree with it doesn't mean that they're getting paid to fucking have that opinion. Stop saying grifter. None of you are using the word grifter right. That's not, it's like you're trying to like, it's like you're just trying to manifest like an excuse for them to have that opinion. Oh, they don't agree with me. It must be because they're getting paid. No, maybe they just don't agree with your opinion. Your opinion isn't objective. It's subjective. People have different opinions sometimes. Did you know that? Jesus, fucking tits on my ass, dude. Like, god damn. Enough of the word, enough grifter. Enough grifting. Nobody's grifting. I'm not gonna say nobody's grifting, but there's not as many people as you guys are making it out to be online. Anyways, where was I? But yeah, just to wrap this up, if you're just watching stuff to critique it or to shit on it, like, get a life. There's so much wrestling out there. There's something for you. There's something to titillate your senses that you want to be titillated. So if you're just watching stuff for the sake of watching it, no, you're wasting your time. You're wasting everybody else's time by talking about it. So All right, we got another one from Instagram. Black_mass says Karrion Kross deserves at least one good championship run. All right, here's another. We're talking about pet peeves, talking about words that are used online that annoy me. Karrion Kross deserves at least one good championship run, you say. The word deserves. Let's talk about deserves. Wrestling fans have no authority on who deserves anything. Tenure, how many matches you have, whatever. Like, there are a lot of people that work hard in wrestling. A lot of people that work their asses off that don't even make it to a stage of WWE or AEW. For years and years, decades and decades, does that mean they deserve something just because they worked hard at it for a long time? No. You know who deserves to have championships in WWE or any other wrestling company? You know who deserves championship runs? Wrestlers that the crowd responds to and wrestlers that make sense to hold those championships to facilitate stories on that wrestling program. Those are the people that deserve, quote unquote, championship runs. Just because somebody's having good matches or has a good character or has a good promo, what have you, doesn't mean they deserve anything. And wrestling fans have no say in who deserves anything in any wrestling company. Karrion Kross deserving a championship run. Does he, though? Based on what? Like, do you like his character? Look, if you like Karrion Kross's character, that's fine. I understand it. He's a good promo. The Final Testament. What's this faction called? The Final Testament, right? Like, it's whatever. It's cool sometimes. They have a cool presentation. Like I said, he's a good talker. I enjoy his promo style. I enjoy his out of the ring, how he presents himself, his look, the whole gimmick, the whole presentation. I'm a fan of that, right? Then he comes out to the ring, gets in the ring, and then the bell rings. And then he proceeds to shit his pants every single time. He is I think I've even talked about this on the podcast before. Karrion Kross is a huge dude. I've seen photos on him on Instagram or whatever, doing like jujitsu and MMA and all that stuff, right? So he's proficient in combat. So he has that like legit credibility behind him. Like I said, he's a tall guy, pretty muscular, has a cool look. But then he gets in the ring and he's just so goddamn soft with everything. He's so boring. Holy shit. Who could possibly give a fuck about a Karrion Kross match? Gee Willikers, his finisher, what is he called? The cross hammer, which is basically a hidden blade, but like, like that episode of SpongeBob where he's doing like barbell cleans, but he has like teddy bears on the ends of them instead of like metal plates. That's the comparison from the hidden blade to the cross hammer. He's like, look at this big menacing dude, and he runs at him and he's just like, eh. It's all of his offense. Big dude, big jacked, tattoos. He's got a beard, he's a big jacked guy, goes up to him, clenches his fist, and he goes, yeah. Lay it in, Karrion. Jesus, have some sort of authenticity to your offense. Make me believe that you're out to hurt your opponent, because as of right now, I do not buy that shit. And I'm so pissed off because he's such a good character, and it could translate to something special if he wasn't so dog shit bell to bell. Jesus Christ. For the love of Pete. So no, he doesn't deserve a championship run, in my opinion. I think Paul Ellering deserves a shot before he does, but I digress. Kratzo on X, at Kratzo, says, okay, so my initial tweet, there's some context for this. My initial tweet was, I think I'm going to enter my generic wrestling content creator era. Seems to be very fruitful. Give me your wrestling hot takes. We'll respond in a future episode. It was just tongue in cheek because everybody and their mother is, give me your hot takes. Disclaimer, your username will appear on everyone has the same fucking template that they put out. So I'm not really, I think this is kind of a joke on his part, but just like, And I'm not here to shit on other wrestling content creators because I know a lot of people do a lot of good work, put in a lot of hard work, and everybody's trying to make it in this realm that we've cultivated here, right? I'm just gonna say this. To me, it's very demoralizing to see so many people have success in this space when they put out such dog shit content. How many, like, I'll just say this. If your content is quote unquote is talking about making content more so than it actually is the you know what I mean? It's like there's people out there they're talking more about like, I need these many views to become a Twitch partner, and I'm looking on editing, and now I'm editing this, and then here's my setup, and here, like, at what point is like, what do you even do? Like, do something creative, do something. And people are engaging with this stuff, so who am I to say? But I don't know. It's just very, like I said, I don't want to get too much into it because it just comes off bitter, and I don't think you grow by shitting on others. But there's some people that deserve to be shit on. And there's also like a big demographic of people like with the fucking over the top. This is the one thing I'll say. This is the one thing that pisses me off. I don't know, like, how many Raw watch-alongs do we need out there? It's just people over exaggerating their reactions to try to get clipped and put on Raw. That's all they're doing. Oh, Jey Uso's out. Oh, Jey, he's cooking. Oh my god. Eyes popping out. Fucking Jesus Christ. Do you have a soul? Anyways, that's all I got to say about that. Frank from the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast at LMW Podcast on Twitter, he has a few for me. He says Ruthless Aggression Era is better than the Attitude Era. Now, spoiler alert, I plan on doing a whole video on this because I think there is that much to say about it. But I'll just say this here. I think that's a perfectly fair opinion. Ruthless Aggression, Attitude Era, when comparing them, they're very different eras. And I think it's pretty safe to say Ruthless Aggression will give you better in-ring bell-to-bell stuff. You can say maybe some of the characters. You might prefer the characters in Ruthless Aggression. You might prefer just the overall presentation of the product, people involved, the pay-per-views, the main events, all that stuff, right? The different style. That's fair, right? The Attitude Era is an era where if you didn't live through it, like if you weren't watching live, I just don't think you can understand why it was so good. Like the Attitude Era, and again, I'm going to do a whole video on this because I think there's so much to dig into here. When people say this isn't even really a hot take. I see this take all over the place. I would say the majority of people feel this way. The Attitude Era wasn't that good. And they say this because the in-ring action wasn't that good. But turn on an Attitude Era event. People are going bananas, packed arenas, signs all over the place, camera bulbs. People are losing their tits over what is happening in front of them. Even if maybe the athleticism isn't there always, or, they weren't getting 5-star Dave Meltzer, whatever the hells. But the characters, the storylines, you were invested in the people that were on your screen. Not only that, but the Attitude Era, this is the key point. The way the Attitude Era meshed with where society was at the time is what made it so good. That grungy, the vulgarity, everything, right? And the way it blended with where everybody was consuming, MTV, and where music was, where television was, where movies were just where people were in the world. Attitude Era fed that appetite perfectly in the context of a pro wrestling medium. That's the key. You had to be there in the time to understand it. If you go back, if you were born in 2007 and you go back and watch, 97, 98, 99, 2000, whatever the hell, you might not enjoy it because you don't associate with these characters. You don't associate with the times, what was cool, what was exciting back then, the mindset of the human being in that point of time. It all you, like I said, you had to be there at that point in time. So while I don't necessarily disagree with Ruthless Aggression Era being better than Attitude Era, ultimately that's subjective. I think both. I don't even know if I could really pick one. I enjoy them. They're apples and oranges to me. But I think this people just outright saying that the Attitude Era wasn't good. I think you come off very uneducated if you have that opinion, or you're just looking for clicks, which that's the internet for you. Frank has another one. Actually, I'm gonna combine 3 different takes here because they kind of all allude to the same premise here. So Frank says work rate means nothing by itself, and you don't need it to have a good match. Then we got at Juice Springsteen on Twitter. Go check his podcast out. He says, saying I want to have a 5 match or a banger instead of wanting to win a match is incredibly bizarre. At Tom Austin Show says AEW ruins its product by rushing dream matches. So this all kind of encapsulates a few different things here, right? But it's ultimately the overarching umbrella here is work rate. Is how do we perceive work rate in this day and age? And this is my overall take on this can be illustrated by as of recording this, the last episode of Dynamite, the 5-year anniversary. We had Will Ospreay versus Ricochet, and we had Bryan Danielson versus Okada on the same fucking card. Crazy. Insanity. I'm watching the show. I watch it all 2 hours, or 2.5, whatever it was. I felt nothing after it. It didn't give me any emotion. At the end of the day, wrestling or any TV show, any medium of entertainment should give you some sort of emotion. And I had no emotion. They were mechanically good matches, like Ricochet, Will Ospreay, hell yeah, man. Athletic guys, super crisp offense, very impressive sequences, fun stuff. Bryan Danielson versus Okada, pretty hard hitting, good technical stuff. Sure. Felt nothing. Who gives a shit? 4.25 stars or whatever the hell. Yeah, cool. Who cares? So Frank's statement of work rate means nothing by itself, and you don't need it to have a good match, I completely agree with. Work rate, I don't even know really what work rate means at this point. Is it the amount of moves that you do? Is it the amount of false finishes in your matches? Is it how stiff you are with your strikes? I don't even know, but yeah, just the physical things you do in a match. I'm not going to say they don't matter, but if that's all you got, if you're doing these impressive stuff, if you're doing these impressive things in the ring and nobody cares, then you're not a good wrestler. You're just not. That's not good wrestling. I don't care how many pile drivers you do. I don't care how many pump knee strikes. I don't care about how many finisher trades you do. If the crowd isn't reacting to you good or bad, then you suck. And the match sucks. By the way, I'm not saying that this applies to Ricochet, Ospreay, or Danielson, Okada. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying, those 2 matches, they were good matches, but I'm going to forget about them in 2 weeks. Just because there's just this hunger for bangers. Everybody loves that word. Banger, banger, banger. I've said it too, I'm sure, ironically. But this hunt for bangers in terms of wrestling matches, by the way, a banger is not the same as a good wrestling match. I'm just going to put that out there. A good wrestling match is I don't know, Bret Hart versus Steve Austin, WrestleMania 13, or Okada, Kenny Omega, even Nigel McGuinness, Bryan Danielson, etc., etc. Bangers are these matches that kind of just have what I just talked about, right? You hit your finisher, I kick out. I hit my finisher, you kick out. We get in the middle of the ring, we trade forearms. Doosh, doosh, doosh. A couple more false finishes, maybe drop you on your head here, drop you on your head on the apron. A couple enziguris, couple pump knee strikes, pump kicks. Go on for 25 minutes just doing shit, and then somebody will win. That's a banger. There's several of those every week. Every week. Several of those. among all the shows, a good wrestling match is a match that elicits emotion from the viewer, something that gets you invested in the result of that match, something that you remember for years and years to come, something that makes you feel. And when there's all of these bangers, when it's just dream match, oh my God, boom, 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 banger, 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 banger. If everything is special, nothing is special. Let me say that one more time. If everything is special, nothing is special. Now, I'm not sitting here and being like, oh, people should people should have worse matches. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying a lot of the booking patterns today, more so in AEW than WWE, are geared towards these dream matches, which is what Tom Austin says. AEW ruins its product by rushing dream matches, is what his take was. And I agree with that. Okada, Danielson. These two came out on Dynamite. I didn't give a shit. You know, I won't even say I didn't give a shit, but I was just very whelmed. Not overwhelmed, not underwhelmed. I was very whelmed. I was like, okay, here's a match. Bryan Danielson, Kazuchika Okada is a crazy matchup. I should be just on the edge of my asshole watching this match. It didn't really captivate me that much. I'm sorry, it just didn't. Ospreay Ricochet. First time we're seeing this match in what? 7 years? A match that broke the internet back then? Caused Vader to come out of retirement? I should feel something, but it didn't make me feel anything, man. Like, the crowd will react, right? They'll pop in the major spots. But are people tuning in to see this match is the question. Yeah, when it's right in front of you, you're gonna be like, oh, geez, whoa, wow, whoa, good. But are you going to buy a ticket to see them next time? Are you going to buy the pay-per-view? Are you going to tune in next week to see what shakes up with this feud going forward? Metrics say no. So, I don't know, man. I'm just I'm fatigued of this desire. Like it's like people are like chasing clips on social media. They're GIF wrestlers. Let me do a cool spot on the apron. That'll get a lot of traction. That'll get a lot of engagement on X. Doesn't mean the match is good. It kind of all ties into what Juice said, which his take again was saying I want to have a 5 match or a banger instead of wanting to win the match is incredibly bizarre. This is kind of like a branch off of that discussion, right? Because, and me and him talked about it on his podcast, which will be dropping shortly, I believe. This is more in the kayfabe sense of like somebody wanting, like in character, like it's more important for them to have a 5-star match than it is to win the match, which I completely agree with. Like in saying that that's bizarre. Like you'll have Will Ospreay comes out, and he'll like, he's probably a bad example because he wins a lot of matches, but like if somebody comes out who maybe has lost a lot of matches recently, but they've been good matches, like their argument for getting a title shot will be, look, I've had a lot of good matches recently. Okay, but have you won any? Like, it's like the in kayfabe instinct to brag about the quality of a match is completely backwards to me. Because you would think you'd want to have a completely shitty match. You'd want to just win in 5 seconds. You know, minimize the damage to your body and get the winner's purse and move up the rankings in the least amount of time. You'd think that'd be the desire of everybody. Now, baby faces, you can make an argument that they're here. They want to entertain the audience, yada, yada, yada. I get that to an extent, right? But you have heels doing it too. You have fucking Chris Jericho bragging about his cage match ratings. And I know that's a little tongue in cheek on his part with his character, but that's representative of what a lot of people do. They'll brag about their match quality and not their win-loss record in kayfabe, which in kayfabe, that should be the most important thing, you would think. I don't know. So I agree with that, Juice, for sure. All right, let's move on to Marks on Media on X. Boy Troy here, shout out. He says, Sean O'Hare He needed more time to cook. He could have gotten over. Same with Mordecai. Sean O'Hare, I definitely agree with. And this is something that I've seen a lot of his stuff recently in my podcast, and I think there's even more coming up on the timeline that I'm on. Such a cool look, really, really unique style for the time, that martial arts, but also this big muscle head doing all this athletic stuff like that. Nowadays, that is kind of a dime a dozen, unfortunately. He's not supposed to move like that when he's that big. Like that's fucking everybody nowadays. But Sean O'Hare, that he was a diamond in the rough back then. He just had a cool presence to him. And it seems like he never really got a shot. I think he got in his own way, unfortunately. But yeah, they just kind of stuck him with Roddy Piper, and that stunk. I would have loved to see him get more of a spotlight for sure. So I definitely agree with this. Mordecai, I really can't remember. I mean, I'm more familiar with Kevin Thorne than Mordecai, but I don't know. Again, that's another thing that I'm about to approach in my timeline, so I'll probably have more to say about it when I get there. But I mean, fun fact, I saw Mordecai wrestle live. Great American Bash 04. I don't really remember a lot of it, but it was just a weird time for WWE. Not a lot of good talent to work with. Mordecai, I mean, he wasn't that bad from what I remember, but I don't know. How many spooky fucking characters do we need? How many demonic characters? I know he's kind of like the opposite of demonic, but you know what I mean, right? So Frank has one more at LMW Podcast. He says, Spike Dudley is a better wrestler than Naito. I don't think this is a hot take at all. Pretty cut and dry, I think. At Scottish Jug. Nowadays, probably. I'm sure Spike can move better than Naito. Gee whiz. Pack that Destino in, Tetsuya. Enough. Find a new finisher. You have like 78 other moves that have names with them. Use one of them as your finisher. At Scottish Juggalo on X, he says that he's had this take since 2005. Undertaker and Kane should have wrestled Heidenreich and Snitsky at WrestleMania 21. There was months of story heading into that. WrestleMania 21 had a lack of gimmick matches anyway, aside from Money in the Bank, and it would have been fun. Interesting. So I can't offhand remember the story with Heidenreich and Snitsky. I know Taker. Well, no, yeah, I guess because Taker and Heidenreich were feuding, right? They had a casket match, I think, at Royal Rumble 05, and then Kane and Snitsky. I think this is the Snitsky kicking the baby into the crowd and all that shit. I just don't think any of those individual feuds were particularly successful in terms of crowd engagement. Like, I don't think the crowd really cared. I don't think either feud was over, so I don't think combining the two would have gave you a net positive in that sense. So I don't think I agree with this one. And I mean, what implications does this have on WrestleMania 21? So you would take Kane out of the Money in the Bank, which that's fine. You could replace him with whoever. Undertaker, you wouldn't have gotten Undertaker versus Randy Orton at WrestleMania, which I guess it doesn't really matter because their feud would continue at like what, SummerSlam, right? I think it was. So you could have just postponed it. So I don't think that would have had much harm. Undertaker, Kane versus Heidenreich and Snitsky at WrestleMania 21. That just, when I put that in my mouth, it doesn't taste good. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get it. Like they had stories there, but the question is, are the stories good? And I just don't think Heidenreich nor Snitsky were ready for that spot. So, but again, this is something that I will approach in my timeline pretty soon. So who knows? Maybe my tune will change, but I disagree as of right now. Chris Soloma on X at Soloma_Chris says that he's not a big Will Ospreay fan. I mean, that's fair. I like Will Ospreay. I will say, and not that Chris here is necessarily saying this, but there's a big contingent online that thinks Will Ospreay is still like the no-sell guy. The guy that just flips and no-sells when like he hasn't really been that guy in like a decade. So I don't know. I think Will Ospreay has really matured and evolved as a performer over the years, and he's really become, he's one of the best in the world for sure. I know I'm not really breaking any new ground by saying that. But almost more importantly than just his like bell to bell abilities, he just comes out with such fire. He has like star power radiating off of him, whether it's his attire that he wears, the jackets, just the energy. He like comes sprinting out of the tunnel, the way he engages with the crowd, his promo abilities, I think are very underrated. He has a lot of passion behind all the words he says. I think he's a great pro wrestler. So I disagree with you, Chris, but again, like if you don't like Will Ospreay, like that's fair. Like if somebody says they don't like Will Ospreay and your reaction is fuck you, you don't know wrestling, you're a fucking drone shill grifter, like shut up, asshole. At Booking Like a Mark. Shout out Mark, just had him on my podcast recently. He says that Armageddon 2000 should not have featured a 6-man Hell in a Cell. It should have been Stone Cold versus Triple H one-on-one in the cell. It was the only story with enough heat to warrant that stipulation. Interesting. So let me pull up the Armageddon card here. Let me just refresh my memory on what this card looked like, because from what I remember, the rest of the card was very much lacking, and you can see why, because all the star power is in the main event. Card here, you got William Regal versus Hardcore Holly for the European title, Val Venus versus China, Kane versus Jericho, Last Man Standing, Right to Censor defending in a fatal 4-way, Radical 6-man tag, Ivory versus Trish, Billy Gunn versus Benoit. So actually, it was kind of a more well-rounded card than I remember. Now I'm looking at it. Maybe. So you're saying Triple H versus Stone Cold in Hell in a Cell is what it should have been rather than the 6-man. Here's my thing with Triple H and Stone Cold. I don't love their matches with each other. I did not like, upon rewatching, because I rewatched this match a few years ago at this point, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. Their 3 stages of Hell match at No Way Out 2001, which was right after this. I didn't like it. I don't think they work well together. I think their feud was great. I think they're dynamic, the promos back and forth, everything involved out of the ring, the build up to the match. I think all of that was awesome. I think Triple H was a great heel. I think Steve Austin was a great babyface. You had all the pieces to make a good match. At just whatever reason, whenever they got in the ring and started working with each other, I never thought it was that good. So my initial thought is I don't really care to see them fighting in Hell in a Cell one-on-one. And I think I prefer the option of the 6-man personally. Plus, it gave you that very memorable moment of Rikishi being tossed off the cage. It was just a cool spectacle having that amount of star power in one match inside Hell in a Cell. They went balls to the wall. They committed to it, and I enjoyed it. I think the match still holds up. It's still fun stuff. And at the end of the day, Kurt Angle, who's the champion, he was able to get the shitty victory by just like picking the bones at the end. So him standing tall among all of these huge stars, Steve Austin, Rock, Triple H, Undertaker, Rikishi, for him to be standing tall, I think benefited Kurt a lot at that time because he's still pretty new at this point. I think he's only been champion for a few months. So it did a lot for Kurt as well. So overall, I think I prefer the 6-man scenario over the scenario you're proposing for Stone Cold versus Triple H. I hear where you're coming from. I think I just personally disagree. I can't totally remember the dynamic between everybody going on at that point as far as like where the heat was. But I know Rikishi had just come out as being the guy that ran over Stone Cold, so he had some heat behind him. Taker is always a guy you can throw in there. I think him and Kurt had the match at Survivor Series that year, right? So they're still kind of feuding. You got the Rock and Austin dynamic, the Rock and Triple H dynamic. I mean, plus Triple H and Stone Cold are both still involved in this cell ultimately. So I think this all worked for me personally. So I was okay with it. Handsome Dan Lopez on X at Dan's Final Say says, Bret Hart was the bitch who was hard to work with. Shawn Michaels was the dedicated, giving professional who was easy to work with. So as far as being hard to work with, easy to work with, it's hard to say. I mean, Dan, unless you were there working with them backstage, I don't think you really know. I don't know. People listening don't know. So who's to say, right? But as far as Bret Hart being the bitch, Shawn Michaels being the giving professional, I think both guys. And it's funny, you know, watching this the Mr. McMahon documentary on Netflix. My wife was watching with me, the softest part of the ring. And we were watching the Montreal Screwjob episode, which she's always been like she had always been like vaguely familiar with it, but she hadn't really watched a true like depiction of like all the actions that happened and the lead up and whatnot. So it was funny because she was conflicted with like who was in the wrong while watching it, and that's honestly like I still am too. I think both got like on the podcast I just covered Shawn losing his smile, which the theory is that he just didn't want to drop the title to Bret. And then you have Bret going on not wanting to drop the title to Shawn in Montreal, or perhaps not wanting to drop the title to Shawn at all later in the year. But is that warranted? Maybe with the things said on TV, the sunny days, and you know, Shawn kind of just starting the whole thing by taking his ball and going home. Like, there's a lot of variables at play. My inclination, Dan, is to disagree with you. I think both guys were kind of assholes at the time. I'm just gonna say that. I think Shawn was the bigger asshole. He was the more gaping asshole. Bret was like, he was like a Kim Jong-un asshole where it's like barely even there. You know what I'm saying? Because Bret Hart, the only thing he didn't do, right, was not want to drop the title to Shawn in his hometown. Which, like, that is annoying, you know? Like, just lose. It's fake fighting. Just lose the match, you baby. But Shawn did a lot of shitty stuff leading up to that. So I get it. There's context there. I get it. And the relationship between the two. There's a lot at play there, but I don't know if I totally agree or disagree. I think I'm kind of on the fence with this one. I think I'm more disagree than agree, but I don't know. Ask me on a different day. I might have a different opinion. Matthew Birch at True Prince of Pro on X says that Xavier Woods should be the one to dethrone Gunther at WrestleMania next year. So you're saying Xavier Woods should win the world title at WrestleMania? Possibly. I said this on Twitter recently that I think the New Day story is the best story going on in WWE right now. I think it's because I like the fact that it's not like a copy paste, like, can I trust you? Can they coexist kind of thing? Like there's layers to it. It's 10 years of build up and relationships. You know, the loss of Big E due to injury. Like there's a lot at play there. So I'm very interested in it because it doesn't seem like it's going the typical WWE Vince McMahon booking way. So I'm interested in it. So it really depends on where they go with that. That'll dictate if I think Xavier Woods should dethrone Gunther at WrestleMania. First of all, I think Gunther should hold on to the title for longer than WrestleMania. I think whoever he defends it at WrestleMania, I feel Gunther should win. I'm saying this right now in October, you know, who knows how I'll feel by then. I guess by then it'll be like, what, like 7-8 months into his reign. So man, you know what? Maybe not. Maybe he'll be fine to drop it at that point. But I like the thought. Matt. I think Xavier Woods is severely underrated. I know that's not a hot take. You know, everybody seems to have that opinion that Xavier is underrated. So maybe he's not underrated when you put it that way. But he's very good. And I think he deserves a singles run of some sort, whether that's the world title, the IC title, or just a spotlight with no title, just as is his own man. I think he deserves that. I'm not mad at the premise of Xavier versus Gunther for the world title. WrestleMania may be a smidge too early, but like I said, this story with him and Kofi, we'll see who gets propelled out of that. I assume if anybody's getting, you know, elevated from that, it would be Xavier, given that Kofi's already accomplished so much and Xavier hasn't. I'll reserve my full judgment until we see how that story fleshes out, but I don't disagree with this take initially. I'm rooting for Xavier Woods to have a lot of momentum come WrestleMania season to warrant that. I mean, imagine Xavier Woods winning the Royal Rumble. Huh? Thoughts? I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. At Tom Austin Show on Twitter says there needs to be more Samoans in WWE. I agree. Not nearly enough. Too many Tongans. At True Prince Matt again chimes in. True Prince of Pro says that Jeff Jarrett should win a singles title in the next 6 months, either by dethroning Jack Perry or by winning this year's Continental Classic. Yeah, I mean, AEW has 11 million titles, so Jeff Jarrett is bound to be worthy of having one of those. TNT title, sure. Title doesn't mean a hill of beans at this point, so might as well, right? Who cares? I hope we get rid of that Continental Championship. I know that's not what this take is, but god damn it. Can we just like, when we get to the Continental Classic this year, can we just have a trophy for the winner and just be done with it? Get rid of the title. The concept of defending the title of a tournament that you won. So like if the guy wins this title from you, does that mean that they won the tournament? Like it doesn't make any sense. It's just so stupid. There's so many like Continental, International, TNT. These are 3 titles that are on the same tier with virtually no differentiation between the titles. So it's like what's the hierarchy there? What title means more than the other? And if they all mean the same thing, then why are they all present? Why do we need this many singles titles for the men? If they all like, it just dilutes the prestige of being a champion in AEW. And I know that's a major talking point for AEW, and it has been. But the Continental title is just so unnecessary, dude. It's so frustrating. Just make it a trophy. I like the Continental Classic. It's a cool round robin tournament, yearly thing. I like it. Give the winner a trophy, have them face the world champion or whatever the stakes are, right? Why are you carrying around a title for the rest of the year and defending it? It doesn't make any sense. It's like, why would I go for that title instead of the international title? You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. So yeah, Jeff Jarrett, have him win the fucking Continental, even if he doesn't win the tournament, have him win the title after the fact. Sure, why not? It's there. I do like Jeff Jarrett though. I would not mind seeing him holding a singles title. Him beating Jack Perry is fun. Might as well, right? Jack Perry, Jesus Christ. Dull as a doorknob, that Jack Perry. There's absolutely nothing there. Good Lord. At Rick_8bits on X says that no matter your age, when you hear a gong or glass shatter, 2 people instantly come to mind. That's right. Hakushi and Jack Perry. At JBV the World on X, shout out JB, former guest of the Apron Bump, says that heels in WWE are too cool. Shout out Grandmaster Sexy. He says heels in WWE are too cool and are justified way too often. Wholeheartedly agree. Wholeheartedly. Well, maybe not wholeheartedly. Mostly heartedly. I think there is merit and there is value to wrestlers having some sort of gray area towards like maybe like 2 guys are feuding and both have different motivations, and it's up to the audience to decide whether they like them or don't like them. I don't love it because you want the crowd to be in favor of one guy and hate the other guy. I mean, that's just wrestling 101, but I don't know. But yes, in terms of them trying too hard to be cool, like that was always my critique on Kevin Owens as a heel. Is like a lot of what he did as a heel was great, but he's like still trying to be funny and like trying to pop the audience and still trying to be like entertaining. It's like, okay, I don't dislike you, so you're not a good heel. Triple H was like that back in the day too. Like, yeah, I agree, and are justified way too often. There's always like, I've always heard this theory, even from people in the business, and I just never really could wrap my head around it. People say that the best heels are people that tell the truth, which like, I don't understand how that, because if they're telling the truth, why do you dislike them? Like, I don't know. I feel like, I mean, just being a heel in modern day wrestling is tough. I think very few people can truly do it nowadays. So they just have to evolve. Just have to evolve. Wrestling evolves and heels evolve and evolves. Is evolve still around? I don't know. The more I say evolve, the more it just doesn't sound like a real word. At Tom Austin Show has one more for us. He says that NWA still exists. That is a hot take. That is a hot take. Oh, NWA. Man, I used to be really into it. You remember, like, I think it was like episode 2 or 3 of the Apron Bump. I was just gushing over NWA, and when they were on YouTube, and this is when like Ricky Starks was there, and Nick Aldis, and Eli Drake. I mean, they just had such a fun thing going, and now it's just like, it's just another indie. I saw that Tom Latimer won the NWA title, so that's pretty cool. I've always been a big Bram fan, so that's cool to see. But yeah, not a lot going on in NWA, unfortunately. Billy Corgan is just a fucking knob. Smashing Pumpkins isn't even a very good band, if we're gonna be honest. But all right, we got one more here to close it out. At Ian Makes Films says that Orange Cassidy should be AEW World Champ. I think it's a feasible option in the future. As of right now, I don't think he's in that position. I don't think he's got a super amount of momentum behind him. But I think he's always a guy that could be put in that spot. I mean, his international title run was incredible. I think if there was a time and place, it might have been then. But in the future, I'm all for it. I'm an Orange Cassidy guy. I think it seems like he's kind of starting to stray away from the gimmick a little bit. Like, he feels a lot like he comes out, he's Orange Cassidy, he's like whatever, he has the thumb. But then he's starting to wrestle just like a normal wrestler. And I get it to an extent, because you can't do the fucking pockets thing. Like at some point it just becomes like mundane and we all expect it and people aren't going to care anymore. Like, I get it. The evolution of Orange Cassidy is a tough one, that gimmick. It's a very unique thing. But I think wholeheartedly, I think he has the ability to, I mean, how many kids in the audience have the Orange Cassidy jacket and the sunglasses and the shirts? He delivers in the ring still. Very, very good wrestler in the ring. I'm just interested to see how he will evolve over time. Because right now, I don't see him as world champion potential at this point in time as we're talking, but I think he's absolutely a guy that could get there for sure. So, but that is the takes, everybody. Appreciate everybody for submitting your sizzling hot takes. Some were hotter than others, but had fun talking about it. Like talking the current product. I'll be doing that more often probably on here. And yeah, make sure you stay tuned. I might do this like, monthly, bi-monthly, or semi-monthly, every 2 months probably. We'll be doing something like this. So make sure you're following on all the social medias at X, or at Apron Bump on X, and all the other social medias. Follow the YouTube as well. Dropping a lot of YouTube exclusive content on there. A lot of fun videos putting out. TikTok, a lot of content there. Join the Discord. Supple on my nipples until milk comes out of there. So that's about all Daddy has for you guys today. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Love you all. Big old smooches all over your face. I'm hard.
Yeah. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Sweep you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Sweep you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started.